per million opportunities. So it is process effectiveness measured in terms of a percentage, but of a sigma rating, which means standard deviation. So in terms of Six Sigma, a long-term sustainable defect levels of 3.4 errors or 3.4 defects per million opportunities translates to 99.9996%. Or if you want to make it short, 3 defects per million, 99.9997%. And some of you may have this question that why such a high level of accuracy required for Six Sigma, 99.9997, why not just say 99%? And I will show you a few examples of what would be the difference between 99% and 99.9997% in terms of real world examples. So we look at the critical to quality factors in terms of the customer. What is the customer's requirement from my product or my service that I provide to them? So the way you measure your Six Sigma level or your Sigma rating or your defect level in Six Sigma is you've got defects per million opportunities calculated using this formula. You've got the number of defects divided by number of units or you produce or number of customers you interact with, multiply by the number of opportunities per unit of making an error or what can go wrong. So if your product has 5 specifications which are very critical to the customer, not every single specs, but the 5 critical specs for the customer. So for example, if you're making a laptop, maybe the screen quality, maybe the processor speed, maybe the hard drive speed, maybe the RAM. So maybe there are 4 or 5 critical to quality, the top requirements from the customer, from your service or from your products. So for example, if you're a service organization, you are a bank. So some of the customer interaction you have is at the customer service desk or at the online banking portal or at the teller machines or at the tellers themselves. So what are the number of critical opportunities for having an average or a great customer experience? So you multiply the number of customers or the number of products you make, multiply by the number of opportunities they have per customer or per product. Whatever answer you get, you multiply by 1,000,000. That would give you at what level of Sigma you are currently at. So if the answer comes back to 3.4 or 3, that means you have achieved Six Sigma level of quality, which is 99.9997% of the time you're able to deliver the product or the service to your customer in the way they want it. Okay, so like I mentioned, if you were just 99% good, which in Sigma level or standard deviation level, it is called at 3.8 Sigma, not Six Sigma, you will be at 3.8 Sigma if you achieved 99% good or 99% accuracy in your work practices. For an example like Emirates Post, based on an average of 2 million articles or mail items they deliver per hour, 99% accuracy would mean they would misdeliver or lose 20,000 mail items per hour. If in terms of DEWA, you would be having unsafe drinking water for almost 15 minutes each day, and that would be a 99% good performance level from DEWA. Similarly, if you look at hospitals, if looking at the number of surgeries the doctors make and the surgeons make, that level of 99% accuracy would translate to 5,000 incorrect surgical operations per week. In terms of airports, so you have the Dubai International Airport, which is one of the busiest airports in the world. If you were having a 99% accuracy from the control towers and from the pilots and from the airline industry, that would mean 2 incorrect landings at the airport per day. So just with an average airport, so even if you have a Heathrow Airport, if you have O'Hare International Airport in the US, or you have the Dubai Airport, they have more than 200 flights per day. So with an average air flight per day of an airport of 200 flights, that would actually mean 2 incorrect landings per day. Similarly, at the pharmacies, if you were at 99% good level, that would mean 2 million wrong prescriptions given to you per year. Similarly, for electricity distribution companies like Viva, that would 99% efficiency, 99% accuracy would mean 7 hours of electricity shutdown every month, or 7 hours of electricity failures every month. Now let's just see what this would look like if these organizations achieve Six Sigma level, which would be 99.9997%. So at the Emirate Post, instead of losing 20,000 articles per hour, they will only be losing 7 articles per hour. Look at the difference in the drop from 20,000 to only 7. Similarly, look at the difference in the drop in Diva. For 15 minutes of unsafe drinking water per day, the Six Sigma level would mean 1 unsafe minute every 7 months. So instead of having 15 minutes in one day only, you will have 1 minute every 7 months. That is the drastic difference just by adding that 0.9997% of accuracy. Similarly, for the hospitals, the operations would reduce from 5,000 to 1.7 per week. For airports, that would mean, look at the drastic difference, 1 short landing or long landing, or 1 incorrect landing every 5 years. Instead of having 2 per day, this goes down to 1 per 5 years. Similarly, for pharmacies, this results into 600. From 2 million, it goes down to 680 wrong prescriptions per year. And for electricity, instead of 7 hours each month, this means 1 hour every 34 years. So this is the drastic difference in improvement in your business processes, in improvement in the customer interaction, in improvement with the customer feedback and the quality of your products and services if you achieve Six Sigma level. Now, yes, even though the difference in achievement looks very small in terms of percentage, that you're only going from 99% to 99.9997%, it's only a 0.9997% improvement. That should not take long. It's actually the hardest. It is easier for a company to reach from 90% to 99 than for a company to achieve from 99% to 99.9997%, because it takes a lot of fine-tuning, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of discipline into your processes to make sure that you've got a system and a process in place that reduces your variability and defects and errors to such a great extent. So, any questions that we have so far? We're about 20 minutes time break. Anybody has any questions on what Six Sigma is and what is the purpose of Six Sigma and why achieve that level of accuracy? We will take about 4 or 5 questions in the next 5 minutes.
And those who have questions, they can raise hands and we will then continue. I think Mr. Zed, there's no questions so far, so we can continue the session. We can proceed there. All right.
All right. Very good. Wonderful. So now let's look at the next aspect of why Six Sigma becomes a necessary tool for each of your companies and how you can make it more useful for yourself. So we all know that all of our companies have got the board and the CEO or the owners and the top executives who create a vision and a mission for the company. What is the vision and the mission for the company? And in order to achieve that vision and mission, you've got the senior executives preparing a business strategy to be able to achieve that vision and mission. And from that strategy, your heads of the departments get their departmental objectives. That if each of the departments achieve their company objectives, that would align themselves with the company's strategy, and which in turn would be able to help the company achieve the vision and mission of the company. Now, there are 2 ways a company can achieve their objectives. Those objectives could be in terms of performance improvement. The objectives could be in terms of sales targets or financial targets. And the objectives could be in terms of training as well for an HR department. Now, whatever those objectives are, there are only 2 ways you can achieve those objectives primarily. Either you can have projects which are new initiatives, new businesses. So for example, take a sales example. Either you can achieve your sales target by identifying new sales prospects, new markets, or you can increase your sales with your existing customers or within your existing markets. Similarly, if you want to improve the performance of a business, either you can have a new initiative or you can improve the existing processes of the company. Now, if I were to ask you, in any of your organizations that you are working with, and we have got a variety of participants from a background of various different kinds of companies. We've got people from sales and marketing, from HR, finance, accounts department, admin department, procurement, warehouse, logistics. I see participants from every different kinds of functions. Now, each one of you, if you reflect back, in an average year, what would you have more in your company? New initiatives or existing processes and existing procedures and existing systems? Invariably, in majority of the organizations, in any particular average year, you will have more of the processes rather than more new projects or new initiatives. And that is where Six Sigma becomes applicable. Six Sigma is more designed towards controlling the processes aspect. So whatever are the inputs to your process and whatever are the outputs from that process, Six Sigma controls that and makes sure that those are having the least or the minimum amount of variability in terms of your customer expectations. Now, whenever we are talking about customers, we have to keep in mind the customers are not necessarily all external customers. The customers can be our internal customers as well. So for example, finance department can have external customers when they make payments to the vendors. Finance department can also have internal customers within the organizations. Similarly, for HR, you have external customers like your potential recruits, but you have your existing internal customers as company employees. So whenever we are talking about customers, we are talking about customer relevant to that specific process. So whatever your process is that you are talking about or you are looking to apply Six Sigma on, you look at whatever are the inputs to that process. What do you need in your department to start this process? So for example, in HR, if you want to start your recruitment for an open position, that means before HR can start to go and start hunting for people, start recruiting people, start interviewing people, they need to have something. So they need to have a requisition form or information data filled out by the departments to be able for them to start the process. So for them, for the recruitment process for HR, the input would be information or data from the required department or the requisition department. So, and the process will be the recruitment process, which HR controls. So whatever HR does, all the steps that are done within the HR to make sure that the recruitment gets completed. That is the process. And who is the customer for that process? Now, for that recruitment process, HR will have two customers. One customer will be external customer, which is the candidate, and the one customer will be the internal customer, which is your requisition department again. So in this case, you're analyzing the entire process and seeing I've got inputs from that process, and that input department also happens to be my customer. So whenever you are measuring the performance of that process, you have to measure the performance of that process in terms of the eyes of your customers, in terms of the eyes of both customers, internal and external. So all the opportunities of errors or the misalignment of the expectations of the customers, that would be taken into account when we are calculating the Sigma level for that recruitment process. So the point over here is to make sure that every department, whether it is IT department, finance department, HR, sales and marketing, engineering department, maintenance, whatever department, procurement, logistics, whatever department it is, you have to make sure that you look at each of your processes and identify and look at each of your internal and external customers and find out what is the critical quality factor for both of those customers. And that if you meet consistently, That is what your Six Sigma level is going to be about, measuring that how consistently are you able to meet the expectations of both of those customers. So if you talk about internal and external customers, you pick up any function in the organization, every single function will have an internal or external or both customers, and if you have customers who have requirements from you, that means Six Sigma is applicable for you. Now, another reason why Six Sigma is so focused on the processes aspect and improvement in the processes. So if you have the wrong strategy and you have inefficient processes, you have failure in the short term, immediate results. However, if the board and the senior management comes up with the right business strategy, but you have inefficient processes, you will still have success in the short term, but your business performance will not be sustainable in the future. You will not have long-term success in your future. And that is why a lot of the companies do not put a lot of focus on the efficiency of the processes. They miss that aspect in the early years of their development because they have got short-term successes. So they think they must be doing everything right. And over in the long term, they start getting hit by the competition. They start getting negative growth. They start having business difficulty in business sustainability. And that is where they realize that they did not focus on the efficiency of their processes. Now let's look at another aspect. If you have very efficient processes, but you do not have the right strategy, you will still have some successes in the short term because of efficient processes. But again, because of having the wrong strategy, you will have failure at the long term. So again, you will not be able to have a sustainable success in the long term. Now, before I go back to the fourth quadrant, let me go back to the previous slide and show you something here. Now, how many people would be involved in developing the right strategy? So strategy, we said that we've got the senior executives of the company, which are very few, handful of people in any organization. Now, compare this to how many people would be involved in practicing all the processes in the company. That would be almost the entire organization. So that could be hundreds or thousands and thousands of people. So if you have the wrong strategy, but you have the most efficient process, it's very easy for you to bring those people who were responsible for the strategy, few people, back into the room, start from scratch and come up with a revised strategy. So fixing those few people is easier, and you're still able to go to a successful scenario in this quadrant where the strategy has been corrected, and because you had efficient processes, you will have success. Now compare this to the other situation where you have the right strategy, which was done by the few people, but you have inefficient processes. In order for you to become successful in the future, you have to fix, train, educate, and control the outputs of so many people and so many processes. That is why it is absolutely critical for every single organization, regardless of their stage, as early as possible to implement Six Sigma methodologies and make their efficient processes. Because if they have processes very efficient, even if they have incorrect strategy, they can easily fix that strategy and go and become a successful business in the long term. And that is why Motorola invented this, and that is why GE pioneered this, because they implemented Six Sigma across the entire organization. And during that 15 to 20 years, when they had implemented this rigorously under Jack Welch, GE became one of the best and the top most rated company in the world for a long, long period, because they were able to have sustained success because of the efficiency in the processes and because of reduced variability in terms of their customer requirements. So this is the reason why Six Sigma becomes important in your company. A lot of times, another misconception that the people have is that they think, let me just clear this annotation. Okay, they think they have good KPIs already implemented. They are able to manage the performance of the company. So they do not need Six Sigma anymore. Now, let me explain to you KPIs and balanced scorecard system or performance indicators development and tracking is just the beginning aspect. So you develop those KPIs. How do you track those KPIs and the performance? You track them by having dashboards, having reports. That's fine. How do you manage to make sure that you have these performances sustained over the future? You've got policies, you've got procedures, you've got software systems, you've got IT technologies to make sure that you're always controlling this. That is still good. Now, that is going to sustain that business level in the long term. Do you want to have the same business level? No, everybody would want to improve and have growth, because as the markets become more competitive, especially in today's environment, in current economic situation, you are seeing two different things. Number one, you are seeing very limited availability of financial and other resources by the company that is available to them. Number two, we are seeing it has become a global market. So we have seen very stiff competition in every sector almost. So how do you keep yourself still competitive, still being able to make the margins that you want to make, to have that financial resources available to you? That means you have to continuously improve your business processes, make them more efficient than your competition to be able to make the more margins. And if you have be able to make better margins, you're able to have better sustainable business growth, and you're able to go into growth mode. Otherwise, if your margins are getting squeezed, you become into cost saving mode and you're not able to expand your businesses. Even if you want to, and part of that improvement is cost cutting measures or cost efficiency measures. So even if you want to implement cost efficiency measures, that is where Six Sigma can help you identify where and how you can improve your cost efficiency so that you can manage yourself and sustain yourself in current economic situations. So even if you have KPIs implemented or not, Six Sigma still becomes very applicable and a necessary tool for your companies. So what are the goals of Six Sigma? Like we said, we are talking about in terms of the customer. So our focus is always on the customer. What is the customer's requirement? So one of the aspects that Six Sigma works in three ways altogether. So the one aspect the Six Sigma works is that you've got a customer target in the center. Majority of the time you're able to meet the customer, but then you have your tolerance limit, the lower tolerance limit and the upper tolerance limit. And then you have some defects or some inappropriate experiences by the customer, which are beyond the tolerable limits. So Six Sigma works to reduce these defects on the higher than the upper and lower than the lower side. So it reduces these defects or these inappropriate interactions with the customers in terms of the critical factors which were important for the customers from your products or for your services. Again, reminder, we are talking about internal and external customers. Another way the Six Sigma works is that if your entire process is misaligned from the customer's requirement. So the customer target was here, you're not able to meet that majority of the time. You got some lower limit, you meet that limit, but then most of the time you got below lower limit, or it could be the other way around as well. That most of the items are away from the customer target. They are either towards the upper side or towards the lower side. So Six Sigma will align that process back towards the center. The third way Six Sigma works is it narrows the entire curves as well. It narrows everyone and gathers everyone together towards the customer target. So that majority of the customer, the process is designed towards achievement of the goals and targets of the customer. You have very few defects outside and very few variations from the mean as well. So there are three ways in parallel the Six Sigma attacks any given process to make sure that they improve. It reduces defects, it aligns and centralizes the process, and it narrows and minimizes the deviations as well. So now that we have seen how Sigma is applied, we can now see that regardless whether you are working in the sales and marketing function, finance function, admin function, HR, IT, internal audit, or any other service area of your organization, it will be applicable to you. And now before I move on to the next set of questions, let me give you some examples. So for example, in sales and marketing, if one of the challenges that you are facing is not being able to identify new business, whether new business from your existing customers or new customers. That means Six Sigma can be applied over here. And as we will see in the next few slides, there is a methodology that you can follow, and Six Sigma will help you identify what are the potential causes, what are the potential opportunities that you can look at, and how you can improve your process to make sure. Now that process could be in terms of your training, the process could be in terms of the identification of targets, the process could be in terms of the bonus structure of the sales team as well, of how are you rewarding and motivating people to identify the new targets. Similarly, for example, in finance department, the collection of the receivables, the time delay in the collection of receivables could be considered as a defect or an error. Time delay of the payments could be considered. Not availability of financing could be considered a defect. So all of these defects can be minimized, and the process could be designed in such a way that every single time finance department processes a payment, it is accurate, it is to the right person, it is fully supported, and it is within time. Similarly, in admin, you can have security incidences, you can have safety incidents, you can have maybe travel arrangement inaccuracies. So all of these inaccuracies, incidents can be considered as a defect, and the process could be redefined, redesigned, and could be made more efficient to make those defects go away. Similarly, in HR, we already gave examples of recruitment. You can give examples of training effectiveness, training efficiency. You can give examples of retention. You can have a retention target. Any retention target being a breach could be a defect. You can have the delays in recruitment, could be considered a defect. Hiring not a right candidate could be a defect. So all of these defect opportunities can be calculated, and the process can be streamlined in a way that these defects and opportunities of errors can be minimized. In IT, you can have downtime, you can have help desk errors, the kind of questions that you are being raised, the kind of downtime you are experiencing, the kind of errors or problems your users are encountering. You can have that. You can have internet connectivity issues. You can have that as a defect, and then you can have the processes streamlined in such a way that these defects will go away. And again, we are talking about, even if you think that you are at 99%, we saw the difference between 99% and the difference from going to the Six Sigma level. And if you can take your organization or your specific function to that level, imagine the level of experience of your customers, internal and external, that we have with your organization. Internal audit, we can have the similar organization. We have the timeliness of completion of the audits, the number of deficiencies identified, number of financial improvement areas identified by internal audit. All of these could be targets. Anytime you miss the target, that's a defect opportunity. In terms of the quality of experience your internal customers will have. So you not only have your timelines and the accuracy and the financial savings identified by internal audit, but also look at the internal customer, which is your auditee. How does he feel? What are the critical success factors for him from the auditor? What does he demand as a customer from the internal auditor? And you can evaluate that performance as well. So again, coming back to the current situation where we are having to work from home for a majority of the people, where we are having such economic challenges in terms of developing the business, in terms of being able to meet our financial obligations, in terms of our ability to maintain our current workforce and still be able to manage the costs associated with it. Everyone is looking for efficiency in every single way. Now, whether it could be efficiency in terms of business growth and revenue generation, whether it is efficiency in terms of cost, whether it is efficiency in terms of workforce. How can you make your business operations in such a way that they become very efficient, and so that you can sustain and go through this time period successfully? So the organizations that can take this time now and take this sort of a relaxed time or a soft time that we have got available with us, if they can take their time to focus on their processes, use the tools available with Six Sigma, use the Six Sigma methodology, and make your processes as efficient as possible. Once this thing is all over soon, inshallah, you will see that those organizations that invested this time period in making their processes efficient will come out much more successful, much more ahead of the curve, and be much more ready to roll forward at a much higher speed when this all becomes better, inshallah, in the future. So this is a good time for us to become ready for the future. Now, what is the Six Sigma methodology? The Six Sigma methodology is a 5-step methodology, which is called DMAIC, D-M-A-I-C. So what do these stand for? D is the define. So the first thing Six Sigma does is you have to define the problem, or you can convert that problem as an opportunity as well. So you define what is your goal, what is the problem that you are having right now that you want to resolve, what is the opportunity that you want to capture, or what is your objective or target that you want to achieve. That comes in the define phase. Then you have measure phase, which is you measure where are you at right now. A lot of times the mistake the companies make is that they know what the problem is, or they know what the opportunity is, what their target is, and they immediately go towards achieving that target. They do not spend time in correctly and accurately measuring what is the level that they are currently at. So similarly, if one of your defined opportunity is your customer feedback or customer experience, you need to make sure what is the customer experience currently, what is the customer feeling right now, and where are their issues. A lot of times, if you don't do this step, what you end up doing is you end up defining and improving the process only from your point of view and not from the point of view of the customer. So you invest a lot of money, you invest a lot of resources, you change the process, you think that you have made it better, you have made it more streamlined, and at the end of the day, the result is the same. Customer is still not happy because we did not actually measure the process from the customer's point of view. So we have to really define the problem and the opportunity in a proper way from the customer's critical to quality success factors, and to measure our current performance against those success factors. Once we have measured those, then we analyze the root causes of why we are facing that problem, or we analyze why this is a good opportunity for us, or what is the real opportunity that exists, or what is the real target that we are trying to achieve and how we can achieve it. So we analyze this situation, and once we have analyzed, then we have the improve phase, where we are identifying the solutions to the problem, or we are identifying the performance issues, or we are identifying the improvements that we have to do to be able to come up to this to the expectations of the customer. Then the last phase is the control phase, which again a lot of the companies miss out on if they are not following the Six Sigma methodology, which is they get very happy, they get very excited once they have implemented the new steps. The implementation has rolled out successfully, there is celebration, the results have been achieved, success has been achieved in the short term, and everybody celebrates it and they forget about it. And then over the period of time, the actual process goes back to the way it was, and it was not meeting the customer requirements. So they miss the control aspect. You need to make sure that you've got specific steps in place to make sure that whatever improvement suggestions you had suggested, or whatever improvements were implemented, or whatever solutions were implemented, they continue that way. So there is a continuous aspect of it. So what Six Sigma does is it does two things. Number one, what it does is it provides a structured data-based approach, because a lot of times what you may be thinking is, this is all very common sense. Why do we need Six Sigma? You define the problem, you measure the problem, you analyze the problem, you improve it, and you control it. Makes sense. A lot of common sense. Why do we need Six Sigma? The advantage of Six Sigma is twofold, threefold actually. Number one, a lot of times even the best people, they may, at the heat of the situation, they may forget one of the common sense steps, which otherwise would have made sense to them. So the following a structured approach helps you to remember every single step, helps you to make sure that you do not skip a step, helps you to make sure that you stay on target and on track. So that is one advantage of Six Sigma. It is a very structured approach that everyone can follow. Second aspect of Six Sigma is it is a data-based approach. So if for each of these stages, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control, you do not make just decisions just based on your gut feel or intuition. You have to support that with authentic, reliable data. So for every single stage, you have to present and you have to capture and gather relevant data and support your decisions based upon that data. So it is a very data decision based approach. The third aspect of Six Sigma or the advantage of Six Sigma is that what Six Sigma has is not just a methodology, but for each of these stages, Six Sigma has specific tools that they teach you and you can use to help you make sure that you get the most for each of these stages. So for define phase, they've got specific tools. For measure phase, they've got specific tools. For analyze phase, they've got specific tools that you can implement to identify the root causes correctly and to make sure that you've got to the real root cause, the real bottom root cause as well. And for improvement phase, to be able to identify solutions, they can give you tools. And for control phase as well, they've got tools that you can implement as part of your solution so that you can continuously monitor the performance of that process and make sure that it stays towards the customer's requirement. So having said this, one of the challenges of Six Sigma is it is the availability of authentic data. So because every decision is data-based, every decision is based upon authentic data, it requires that you in your company, you have that authentic data readily available. Now, I say this is not a stopping point for Six Sigma implementation, but it is a significant challenge because if you do not have authentic data readily available through the use of technology or computer systems or streamlined systems, then the implementation of Six Sigma steps would take longer because you will have to manually gather that data, you have to test that data, and you have to authenticate that data before you can move on to the next stage. What it requires is it requires a good understanding of business process. So what that means is that Six Sigma is not something that you can just hire outside consultants for, and they will come and they will implement Six Sigma and they will improve your processes. It cannot, because anybody coming from outside cannot develop that level of understanding of the business processes compared to the people who are using that business process. So the challenge of Six Sigma is that the real success requires deep involvement and a very heavy involvement from the people of the organization involved in that process themselves. So you do have support from outside consultants, you can have facilitators, you can have people who can guide you in the right direction, but you need to have relevant people who are practicing that business process on a daily basis to be involved in that process. Then also one of the challenges of Six Sigma is that the focus is on continuous improvement. So a lot of times, especially if you are trying to move from 99% to 99.9997%, the improvement is going to be smaller incremental improvements, not a big gradual improvement. Compared to if you are going from, let's say, 60% currently and you're now implementing Six Sigma, you will have a very quick improvement towards 99% or 90% plus. So so sometimes companies, so that is also why it is so important that you measure your current performance level and then you define your goal accordingly, and you have that awareness that if you are already at 90% plus, then it means that you will have smaller continuous improvements rather than one big improvement. However, on the contrary, if you find that you are currently at 60%, 70%, 75%, then it is likely that your first improvement would be a bigger improvement, and then you'll have smaller continuous improvement. So it's the challenge is having that awareness, having that patience, and having that resilience to continue this Six Sigma process for a longer period of time to get the maximum benefits. All right. So any questions on Six Sigma methodology and how does that relate to your organization so far? Before we move on to the tool.
Yeah, Mr. Zaid, I'll be taking questions one by one. I can see the raised hands. So I'll be unmuting the participants one by one so that they can ask question. Dr. Joseph, I am going to unmute you so you can ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, one of the questions, thank you first of all, Mr. Zaid, for a nice presentation. First of all, the first question is that how does Six Sigma actually address the quality of the identified errors or defects?
Okay, let me see if I understand your question correctly. Your question is, how does Six Sigma address the quality of defects? Is that the question?
Yeah, I mean the identification process of the defects and errors. How do we evaluate, let's say, how good our identification process is? Because you can identify errors, but are they, let's say, of is your process of identifying the errors of high quality, or let's say, or
wonderful. I understand. Wonderful questions. Now, so like I mentioned, the Six Sigma has got 5 steps in the methodology, the DMAIC steps: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So for each of the step, so even if you are defining the problem or defining your errors, for that step, they've got specific tools. And one of those specific tools is that they do a measurement system analysis, MSA. So for every single time that you calculate something or you define your errors or you identify your errors, there is an MSA tool that is applied to authenticate and make sure that this is actually authentic data and the quality of the data that you've come up with is good. Otherwise, it will identify that this is not a good quality data. It is not authenticated. It is not verified. And there are errors and there are gaps in this data. And you need to go back and define another way of capturing this data. So you can make the data identification as your main problem now. You can measure that problem. You can analyze that problem and improve that problem as well. So Six Sigma works both sides. And because it is data-driven approach, the focus on every single stage before you move on to the next stage is to make sure you authenticate and validate your current data. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Dr. Joseph, please speak.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. It definitely asked my question. Another question I have, if I may ask, is how does lean principles or lean manufacturing, let's say, or lean concept relate to Six Sigma?
Great question. Wonderful. So what happened is that if you considered all the available tools that Six Sigma methodology uses, because it is so data driven and all the decisions are driven based on authentic data, there are a lot of statistical tools that are used as well to make sure that the data is being authenticated or to make sure that you are identifying the right data. So a lot of times that statistical tools become a little bit more complicated for people to just normal people to understand who do not have a statistics background or a mathematics background. So for example, for engineers, it was easy because they have a very strong statistics and mathematical background. So they were able to use Six Sigma without any issues. But for some other function areas who are not so heavily competent in using or comfortable in using statistical tools, a smaller version of Six Sigma was designed called the Lean Six Sigma. So it has lesser number of tools, and predominantly what it does is takes away more of the complex statistical tools away. So most of the organizations that implement Lean Six Sigma, they use the easier and simpler statistical methods and the easier, simpler tools rather than the full-blown Six Sigma toolkit.
Okay, thank you.
I will be moving to the.
You're welcome.
I'll be moving to the next question. Mr. Mohammed Rizwan, I will be taking your questions, so I'm unmuting you.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you. Just I wanted to keen to know about the 0.7%. You know, we have the formula about 99% and 99.99996% good. What you are saying, the difference is, you know, it's astonishing for me. What is the math behind it, and how come 20 or 20,000 becomes 7 article, or you know, unsafe drinking water almost 15 minutes each day becomes unsafe for 7 months? I mean, how come? For just
wonderful. So basically, you're looking at a mathematical calculation behind that. Right? So, okay, so the way Six Sigma is being calculated is based upon standard deviations. So what it calculates is, so for every single item that you make, if there are error, it calculates the standard deviation of that error for each item, and it adds them up and then does the standard deviation calculation for that. So what happens is, in 99.9997, which is only 0.0003% improvement, the standard deviation, which is the variability aspect, has gone down significantly. So in 99% accuracy, and also we're talking about 1 million units, most of the organizations will have much more than 1 million actual units or actual interactions with the customers, more than 1 million opportunities for having a defect. So therefore, because of the value of the numbers being involved, the improvement becomes such a drastic improvement from 20,000 to 7. So it is a mathematical calculation using standard deviations, which is the square root of the difference. So I don't want to go into the complex statistical side of it. It's the square root of the variation calculated in terms of numerical value. And then you add them up for the entire number of units, and you will see the difference versus 99% versus 99.9997%.
Okay, I will be taking the next question of Miss Lakshmi. Miss Lakshmi, I'm unmuting you. If you would like to, you can join with the video as well.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Said. It was an interesting presentation. Just a question, like, you know, you have been taking us through theoretically all the aspects, but it would have been better if you can just show an example of the implementation, a very simple example, and how various formulas are used in each level of, you know, defining, measuring, and you know, all these aspects. Very small example would have been much better for understanding how this could be implemented in various aspects of our projects.
Okay, wonderful. First of all, I want to make one clarification that Six Sigma is more designed towards your processes rather than projects. So there are other tools which are more suitable for project management or for new initiatives or new projects that I would recommend rather than using Six Sigma over there. Six Sigma is more designed for your regular routine processes, number one. Number two, I would have given examples of each of the phases, it would have taken much longer. So what I will be doing in the next 15 minutes or the next 10-minute session is I will be taking the analyze phase, and I will be giving you a specific tool and how that tool is being used for the analyze phase to capture that analysis. So from there, you will be able to see the practical example of how that tool is used. And that will give you one of the many examples of how Six Sigma has benefits in the implementation in your organization.
Okay, Mr. Zed, are we taking more questions right now, or you're moving towards the next phase?
All right, we can move towards the next phase, and I think because more questions would be towards the tool aspect then.
Okay, so we will be taking the rest of the questions at the end. All right.
All right. Okay. Okay. So, like I mentioned, one of the phases is the analyze phase. And Six Sigma tool is used to identify potential causes of the problem or in that analysis phase, because you've already defined the problem, you've already measured the problem and the extent of the situation you are in currently. So now you want to analyze the problem and see what is causing this problem and how I can best fix this problem. So there are three common tools that are used in the analysis phase. Pareto charts, fishbone diagram, and FMEA analysis, which is failure mode and effect analysis. We will talk about Pareto charts first in the next 5-6 minutes to give you an example of how this tool is used in Six Sigma. So what Pareto chart is basically also called 80-20 rule. So what that is that by making the 20% efforts, you can get 80% results. Now, what that means in Six Sigma is that if you focus on your top 20% of the causes, you can solve 80% of your problem. So similarly, in terms of financial resources of the company as well, you have to make sure that if you want to achieve the 80% of the results, where do you need to focus the 20% areas that you need to focus on in the company to improve right now to be able to get the 80% results. So that is what the principle behind the Pareto chart is. And how that is used is it is a graphical representation. So it is easy for people who are non-statistical based to be able to understand why this is happening. Also because because it is a graphical representation, it helps people to quickly get the buy-in on the decision and quickly make the decision. So what that does is it identifies all the possible options or the causes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it looks at the frequency at which they are occurring and looks at where do I achieve the 80% result. And I stopped at that. So for example, if I'm achieving 80% at D, I stopped at only addressing these 4 causes right now and forget about the rest. So just focus on these 4 causes, get my 80% result, and then I can move on to the next ones. Let's take a look at a practical example. The steps in which that you will do this is that you have to identify and list the problems first. You have to identify the root cause of each of the problem, score the problems, group problems together by the root causes, add up the scores for each of the group, and then take the action and make the decision. How does that work in real life? So let's take an example. Ahmed has taken over a failing customer service center with a lot of problems that need resolving. His objective is to increase overall customer satisfaction. Now, this customer service center could be for a service center, could be for a bank, could be for for a telecommunication, Diva, could be for anything. Now, he decides to score each problem by the number of complaints that the center has received for each one. So how would Ahmed use Pareto chart to help him make the decision? So traditionally, what people do is they will identify the problem, which is a step number 1. So there are 6 problems that Ahmed had identified, which was phones are not answered quickly enough, which is again coming from the customer. The customers are saying that you're not picking up the phones quickly enough. The staff seems distracted and under pressure. Engineers don't appear to be well organized. They need second visits to bring extra parts. So it looks like this is for a equipment repair service center. Engineers don't know what time they will arrive. This means that customers may have to be in all day waiting for the engineer to visit. Service center staff don't always seem to know what they're doing. When engineers visit, the customer finds that the problem could have been solved over the phone. It did not require him to wait for the engineer's visit, and he could have just resolved it in the phone a few days ago. Now, again, the next step is the causes. So what is the cause for phones are not answered quickly enough? Because you have not enough people in the service center to pick up the phones. The staff seems distracted, under pressure, again, because of the lack of number of people. So you can group these 2 together. Then you have engineers don't appear to be well organized, and engineers don't know what time they will arrive because they are having poor organization and preparation. So these 2 are because of that. You can group them together. And the last 2 can be grouped together. The real cause could be lack of training. So if you have 3 big causes, too few center staff, poor organization, lack of training. If you stop over here and not following the Six Sigma methodology, you would have difficulty in trying to convince your senior management on which step to address first if you have limited resources. If you do not have, or for example, let's say in the current situation, you have a hiring freeze. So you cannot hire more service center staff. It becomes very difficult for you to try to convince your senior management. because you don't have data as well. You're not being able to present in such a way that it is strong enough. So how do you prioritize this? So if you have a scoring system and see how many number of calls are being unanswered because of not availability of stock. So 15. So you've got a scoring system now available of what is the number of incidents or number of defects being caused because of which causes. So if you use this data, you can present this data in this form. So you have lack of training appearing more than 50 times, or being the cause of more than 50 customer negative reviews. You have too few service staff, more about 20, and you have poor organization and preparation about 5 times or 6 times. So if you present this in such a way in the chronological order, in the accumulated percentage order, what you will find is that if you fix only the training aspect, you would achieve and resolve 65% of your customer service problems. And if you are able to hire even half of the requirement, you can achieve 80%, because the next improvement from 65 to 92 will come from hiring the entire shortfall. So if you do not have the entire resources available for hiring, you can definitely achieve 65% results by only training your existing staff. And then you can see that from 65 to 92, from 65 to 80, I only need 15%. And this one from 65 to 92 is another 12% added to it. So 15 plus 12. So even if I hire half of them, I can come close to almost 80% of my results. So this is how you can convince your senior management in presenting this graphically, that if we just focus right now, if we have a complete hiring freeze, if we just focus on training, we can resolve 65%. Now, if you were also to divert your already limited resources toward organization and preparation of the engineers, what is the incremental benefit you will get? That is another 8% only. So now you can make a very informed decision based on data that for that 8% improvement, what is the cost of fixing the organization and preparation of the engineers? Does that make sense for 8% improvement only? Or does it make sense to let go of this aspect right now, only focus on training and get these 65% results? So that is how Pareto charts can help you prioritize your resources, get the quick buy-in from the management on your decisions, help you make the right decision based on data. So that's it from my side on Six Sigma, some of the methodology and one of the tools that you can use. Six Sigma has a complete toolkit of similar tools that you can use for each of the phases. So if you have any questions, now we will take about next 10-15 minutes for any remaining questions that you may have.
Okay, I will be taking question from Mr. Ashraf Jalialwala and muting him.
Yeah, can you hear me, sir? Hello? Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, my question is, it was a very well explained and very comprehensive presentation. My question is that what are the updates on the original theoretical framework of Six Sigma as when it was launched and as it is today?
Sorry, your voice is breaking up. Can you please repeat the question? What is the?
Yeah, Six Sigma original methodology and as it stands today. Had it been more researches and more
Okay, I understand the question now. Okay, so in terms of the methodology, which is the DMAIC methodology, that has remained the same since inception. What has happened over the number of years is the introduction of newer tools and fine tuning of the existing tools that we use in the Six Sigma. So the methodology is the same, which is the DMAIC methodology since inception, since 1986. What has improved over time is the toolkit. So the number of tools and the quality of tools and the complexity of the tools has improved over the years.
Okay, so I'll be taking next question from Tarawat.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you very much for a very useful session. My quick question is more about the probably on the operational side. I was thinking, if the whole organization doesn't use Lean Six Sigma yet or Six Sigma yet, would it be worthwhile just for one department, let's take HR as an example, to implement Lean Six Sigma or Six Sigma? And would it be efficient and effective? Would you recommend
wonderful
that? Or would
question.
You recommend
Thank you for this question. This is a very good question. Now, absolutely wonderful question. Now, let me answer in this way, that sometimes what I have done in my corporate career is, when the organization was not ready to implement and roll out Six Sigma at the organization level, what I did was, in my department, I did not call it Six Sigma. I call it my methodology of problem solving. So I did not use the words and the lingos of Six Sigma, just to make sure that the people were not becoming defensive. But I use the same methodology. I use the same structured approach. I use the tools available from Six Sigma, and I use the data-driven decision making. Because the focus is not whether the company is rolling it out or not. The focus is to make sure that, number one, you've got the right processes in your department to be able to meet your customers' needs in the best and most efficient way. And the focus is to make decisions which are based upon authentic data. So even if your organization is not ready to roll it out at the organization level, you can, and even if your department is not ready to roll it out at the department level, you can still implement Six Sigma for your individual self. If you are the team leader, if you got your section, for example, within HR, if you've got the recruitment section and you are the head of that, you can implement Six Sigma at your recruitment team level. If you are the head of HR, you can implement Six Sigma at the HR level, because every single person as an individual is going to be involved in at least one process in the organization. And that process can be further improved and streamlined to meet the better requirements of your internal or external customers. And if that is the case, you can use Six Sigma tools.
Okay, I will be taking next question from Mr. Dr. Joseph.
Yes, thank you again for a very good session. The question I had in mind was about the causes that you presented in the Pareto chart example. They must be the root causes that are identified in a systematic problem-solving way.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. So it's the fishbone combined with the 5.
Yes. So if I revert back to the initial slide, there are at least, so in a Lean Six Sigma, there are at least these 3 tools that are used. So Pareto chart, fishbone, so and failure mode and effect analysis. So all 3 are used. So for example, fishbone could have been used to identify the real root causes, and then Pareto chart could be used to prioritize them and to present them in such a way that you get the buy-in decision.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let me just see if there are more questions or raised hands. No, I guess there's no raised hands, Mr. Zaid. I think people have very well understood the concept.
Thank you for everyone's participation and wonderful questions. And this is only one part of the series that we are doing. The entire complete course we will be presenting, and SIMFOTIX will be presenting you more information on how we can do this course. And the reason why we wanted to, you will find on the website, there are a lot of courses which are pre-recorded, which are available. And as you will see, that this is one of the advantages of the live sessions, that you can have question answers, you can have direct feedback from the trainer as well.
Mr. Zaid, a couple of questions, a couple of raised hands. I'm going to quickly take their questions as well. All right.
Sure.
Mr. Bilal, I'm unmuting you.
Hi, Zaid. This is Bilal. Thank you very much for such an informative presentation. It was
My
concise and
pleasure.
brief. And to be honest, previously I had no idea about it, and you have briefly very well. Thanks for that. My question is basically if we are interested to do this Six Sigma certification, how this certification stands with the peer group. Is it the best in the town, or there are parallel certifications? And why someone like me should be doing Six Sigma certification, not any other certification? This is number one. And secondly, is there any course plan for it where we can enroll and get it certified? And what kind of material which can be shared in terms of to know more about this course? If are there any levels, the time it takes, the cost wise, and everything? Thank you.
Wonderful, great. Great to have you with us, Bilal. You've asked two questions. So the first question is that you're looking at certification. So there are multiple levels of certification. It starts with the white belt, which is the lowest level of certification. Then it's yellow belt, then it's green belt, then it's black belt, then it's master black belt after that. And there is also a parallel certification for people who are more with a finance background. There is called money belt. So the way this structure works in Six Sigma is, it is not just training that you can do. You have to pass certain exams, and you have to practically implement Six Sigma and demonstrate that you have been able to save your organization's a significant amount of money using these tools. And that amount of money is variable according to the level of each certification. So the requirements of the financial savings and the financial benefit to the organization for a green belt certification are higher than for a yellow belt certification and lower than for a black belt certification. And that is where some of the finance individuals also come in as a money belt, because the money belt will be required to certify and authenticate those financial benefits to the organization. So the process way it works is that first you obtain the required training for the level of certification that you want to achieve. You pass an exam for that certification, and then you complete a successful project with financial benefits to the organization for that level of certification. So that's one. So that's the process and the levels. Now, the second question is about the detailed courses. Yes, I believe SIMFOTIX will be getting back to you with more detailed information of how we can conduct these certification courses online in the current situation. And we have been doing certification courses during live sessions and other locations before the current coronavirus situation. So yes, you can obtain that information.
Okay, so Mr. Zishan, Mr. Zed, another question. I'm just going to unmute Rohan Halde.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Rohan, can you hear us? I think he has dropped out, or he's not asking question, I guess. So I'm muting him. Just one more question or raised hand by Bilal again. So I'm just unmuting him.
Zishan, Bilal here again. Basically, my first question, which I would like to reiterate, is how do you rank the Six Sigma certification with the peer group, with other certifications
Yes.
available in the market? And
So,
is it the best in the town? Because
in terms
if I'm
of
someone
process
and I
management,
basically,
process management, this is one of the best certifications available, which is recognized worldwide. So I got my certification from Singapore, but you have got people who are Six Sigma certified all across the globe. And this is one of the most widely accepted process management certification available in the world. So yes, in terms of the quality of certification, it is one of the best, and it is the most widely recognized across the globe. So whether you go to US, Canada, Australia, South Asia, you go to Singapore, Malaysia, even in the Middle East, you will see a very, very high recognition for Six Sigma certifications.
I think one more question by Mr. Bilal. I'm just taking him again. Yeah.
Zishan, as I understand from your explanation, that for this certification an experience is required. Let's say any professional who is basically online and hearing you do not get an opportunity to implement it within the organization they are in. So will it become a bottleneck to get the certification? Because not necessary that each one get the opportunity at the same time. Thanks.
Okay, now, Bilal, the real answer to your question is that if you want to get a certification from, okay, let me first explain this in this way. Unfortunately, there is no central organization that provides this certification. It is completely decentralized. So you will find many, many organizations that can provide certification. So they can provide the training, they can conduct the exam, and they can give you the certification. Now, unfortunately, what that decentralized system has done is you've got some companies who are providing that certification to you with a very, very low cost without you doing anything at all. And there are some very, very highly reputed organizations which are providing this certification as well. So therefore, if you go with an organization which is highly reputed, they will make sure that you conduct a successful project and you submit the required documents to prove that you have successfully implemented before they will certify you. So yes, if you want to have a good certification and with an authentic organization, with a well-reputed organization, you will need to provide that proof. Now, unfortunately, there are other companies available which, for like say even a small amount of fee, they will just prepare the entire project documentation for you and they will give you the certification. So that I would not recommend. But in terms of the opportunity, now I believe, Bilal, you are from Aqua Power.
Let me unmute him.
Zishan, I'm from Aqua Power.
Yes, in finance function, right?
Yes.
Yes. So in finance, even if you do not use the word Six Sigma, even if you do not use the terminology in, but if you improve your process. So for example, even if you take the payment process or your receivables collection process, or if your financing process, you take the process which you feel is the most required process for improvement, and you improve that process using Six Sigma methodology, and you prepare that documentation, that should be good enough for you. You do not need to show to the certification body that you are sponsored by the organization and this organization has validated all of this. All you have to do is present the authentic data and documentation to that organization. They will evaluate it, and they will, if that you have followed the methodology correctly and you have achieved the results, you will get the certification. I believe you know Bilal Akhtar Khan as well from Aqua.
Yeah. I'm just gonna take last question, Mr. Zaid.
Okay.
It's from the Rohan again. I'm just giving him the opportunity. Hi, Rohan. I think he has dropped out. Okay, Mr. Zaid, I think
another
this
user F Dante. I don't know if that's a raised hand or.
I'm not being able to see any raised hand, so I guess this is it. All right. So I'm just I would just at the end of the session, I would just like to thank all the participants who have joined, who take out some time to join the session. And amid all this going on, they are very eager to learn. This shows their higher sense and higher appetite towards learning, that they are coming to the session and they are going for learning. So I would just like to thank everyone, and you will all be receiving the recorded session or recorded video of the session. And also you have my email address. If you have any questions, you can just email me. And if you would like to ask and just by following me, so that any of the session that is coming in the future, I will just keep you all in the loop. So thank you from my end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.